Welcome to Cabo Properties YouTube channel.
Now, in the first segment, serious concerns have surfaced in Sierra Leone regarding the safety of the Air Seron plane with tail number 5NBZZ, which is set to begin operations soon. Recently, sociopolitical activist Dr. Sylvia Olayinka Blyden revealed that the plane had been involved in a serious accident just 6 months ago on May 11, 2024, at Nigeria's Murtala Mohammed Airport in Lagos. The accident, which occurred midday, involved 52 passengers and reportedly caused structural damage to the aircraft. The Nigerian Aviation Authority's report confirmed that the crash was not due to human error or intoxication on the part of the pilot, instead suggested a possible technical issue. In response, the Sierra Leone Civil Aviation Authority acknowledged the incident, describing it as a runway excursion while the aircraft was operating for ZJet airline in Nigeria. They further assured the public of the airline's commitment to quality and safety. Joining us this morning to discuss the safety concerns and upcoming operations of Air Sierra Leone are Musayero Bali, the Director General of the Sierra Leone Civil Aviation Authority, and Edgar Lacroix, the General Manager of Air Sierra Leone Limited. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
I hope I got your name right. All right, definitely. We'll start with you, Musayero. What is it we need to know? There are concerns that have surfaced as we just read out in our introduction there. What is it we need to know about Air Sierra Leone and its operations?
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me this morning. I think it's really important when the public raise concerns around safety for authorities like the CAA to be very transparent in giving the facts around incidents and also assuring the public about the measures that are in place for any airline. So the particular incident in question, I think the press release that we released was very factual and very detailed. And in addition to the information in the press release, we also circulated the full preliminary report that was issued by the Nigerian Investigation Bureau. And the report, I think, is very, very clear. It's very detailed, including the communications between the pilot and control tower prior to the landing of the aircraft. And from our view and from our understanding, based on our inspections also that we've done, base inspections that we've done in Nigeria, the specific incident didn't involve any fatalities of any sort or any injuries of any sort. The aircraft itself did not sustain any damage, and that is reported as a factual point in the report, the full report, and that by all indications, the incident had a lot to do with the weather conditions at the time. There was no indication in that report that the incident was as a result of any form of technical failure of that aircraft or pilot error or anything to do with the actual operations of the aircraft. I have to also make very clear that there are many factors involved when you're dealing with aviation activity, and weather is a huge, significant factor. So in this instance, from what we understand, like I stated earlier, the weather conditions, the rain, the thunderstorm, the low visibility was a significant contributing factor, and there are no indications that the incident, which is a runway excursion, the flight landed and it veered off the runway. So there is no indication in that report from the authorities that this was due to a technical malfunction of the aircraft.
Is there any other way that the May 11 incident would have been brought to the public before concerns being raised?
I think from our side as a regulator, it is not normal practice to disclose this information to the public, especially because, as I stated, we are still in the process of reviewing and processing, this flight in terms of giving it approvals to operate in Sierra Leone. And part of that process will involve the thorough checks, which are not yet, from our side, completed. We have not yet given authorization for that flight to do any form of commercial air transport in Sierra Leone. So it is not normal practice for the CAA or authorities to bring that to the public, prior to the flight commencing operations. Additionally, like I mentioned, this information from our perspective didn't raise a safety concern for the aircraft. It was an incident that happened, and we all know that in our industry, incidents happen. But what would have been a significant concern from us as a regulator is to have an understanding that the incident was a result of a technical fault of that aircraft. And that is something that would have been in the center of the review of the application prior to giving that aircraft clearance to operate here. And I have to emphasize that at this stage, the application is still in process. We have not cleared that craft to operate in Sierra Leone as at now.
Quickly before Jonas comes in, I'll come over to you, Edgar. What would you say is the status of the craft right now? And was it selected due to financial constraints, or what do you also prioritize? Do you prioritize safety over cost and the likes?
Thank you for having me. Definitely Air Seron has a lot of priority when it comes to safety, because this is of high consideration, because we have to take lives and transport lives. Presently, the aircraft is undergoing rigorous maintenance in South Africa, and hopefully very soon it will be flown back to Nigeria and then forwarded to Freetown. And when it gets to Freetown, this aircraft will be allowed to go through the rigorous inspection of the civil aviation authorities here, and then hopefully we will get an approval to operate from the civil aviation. So definitely safety is priority, and the aircraft is presently going to maintenance, and hopefully we'll get to Freetown and then go through the inspections of the civil aviation in Sierra Leone.
So if nothing was wrong with this aircraft, why is it being cleaned at the moment? What you call this maintenance? Why is it ongoing maintenance?
That's a good question. Maintenance is an ongoing process when it comes to aircraft, and that's what defines the safetiness of
the rigorous.
Yes. When I say rigorous, it's in terms of taking care of the aircraft, the painting of the aircraft to get it ready for operations in Sierra Leone.
You're repainting the plane?
Yes, please.
You see, Ms. Barry said that the plane veered off the runway. Mm-hmm. Is it normal or often for a plane to veer off the runway, even when the weather is bad?
Well, that's if you listen to the DG, did mention that it's usual for such incidents to happen at airports all over the world.
Usual. Not heard of this in a long while. Particularly, it's a very dangerous, airport here. I mean, the previous one for now.
Well, I'm not here to give statistics. I'm here
veering off, our runway in Lunga. In fact, I was returning from Kenya about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I had a chat with a few of the airport guys there, and there was this lady flying this aircraft who came to Sierra Leone. At a very early hour, I think it was a Sunday or Monday or so. I cannot quite remember the airline, but the lady struggled to land. She was a female pilot, actually. She spent about 45 minutes on air, trying to figure out how to land. But she didn't veer off the runway. In fact, it was very dark. The lights were off on the runway. There was no electricity on that day, they reported. I mean, if a lady of such, battling with such a climate on that day could, still be on the runway and did not veer off, why would our own aircraft just veer off like that when the lights were on, I want to believe, in that runway on that very day?
Well, unfortunately, we have a report from the Nigerian authorities that explained, and I believe the DG has just explained, that the veering off the runway is not a technical issue. It's purely because, So, I think that's what we need to take into consideration in this case.
Ms. Barry, you seem to be saying that the plane is free of all glitches, no problems whatsoever with this plane. Is that the case? Are you saying that the plane is 100% pure without any mechanical error or problems?
What I'm saying is what I read in the report and what I understand from my colleagues and the authorities in Nigeria is that that aircraft did not sustain any damage as a result of that incident. What I also understand is that the incident was not a result of any technical malfunction of that specific aircraft. Just listening to the conversations and the questions with Air Seron, I just want to clarify that there are various different weather conditions. The experience your friend may have had in Lungi with darkness is completely different to a thunderstorm with heavy rain, because the surface of the runway is a huge factor to affect the smooth landing of an aircraft. So if a surface is contaminated with millimeters of water, we have to understand that this will be a contributing factor.
And that was the case for
That is what is reported for that incident.
Do you believe that?
I believe that because I have no reason. I think we have to also understand that this industry that we're in is a highly regulated industry, and that when incidents happen, we are all compelled as a civil aviation authority and as an accident investigation bureau to report the facts to ICAO, because there is full and frank disclosure when it comes to issues of safety. There is no sovereignty when it comes to safety, because again, it's a global village. That aircraft will leave Sierra Leone and go into somebody else's country. So it is very, very important for us to be full and frank about safety issues. So I have no doubts in my mind that the details of that report, like I said, we also published the full report, that the details of that report were accurate.
Edgar, you mentioned Air Seron now being in South Africa and undergoing maintenance. What are the inspections and modulations being done to it at the moment? Could you share with us?
These are standard maintenance that every aircraft has to undergo. And presently, Air Seron will be like a flag carrier of Sierra Leone. So when I mention being painted, is to ensure that it has the colors of Sierra Leone, because this is the hope that this aircraft will be a flag carrier of Sierra Leone. And so undergoing routine maintenance and also being painted to carry the colors of Sierra Leone. So these are presently what is going on in South Africa.
And after the May 11 incident, did it reach up the skies again? Or it's now going to take its first flight again since May 11?
What I would like to add here is that for a flight to move from Lagos, where it was, and to fly into South Africa, it must have had the regulations of South African airspace respected. So definitely for it to fly from Lagos to South Africa, every aspect of the CAA of South Africa was respected. So definitely the flight was in good condition for it to fly from Lagos to South Africa.
Do you think these safety concerns that were raised, or are being raised, do you think that has hampered public trust or confidence in the airline even before it started its operations? And how would you fix that?
Well, the DG just mentioned that the airline industry is highly regulated, and so for Air Seron to fly from Sierra Leone means that it will have gone through the inspections and has the approval of the Civil Aviation of Sierra Leone. Now this is the same with all the destinations that Air Seron will be flying into, Nigeria, Ghana, eventually to other destinations like the Gambia. So Air Seron will undergo all inspections of these different sovereign states and ensure that the airworthiness of Air Seron is approved from all of these states. So definitely we want to assure the population that Air Seron is going to meet the inspections of the Civil Aviation of Sierra Leone, and have the approval for it to operate in Sierra Leone.
Madam Barry, I would say with the news of Air Seron, a lot of Sierra Leoneans were happy and are waiting to actually see the green, white, and blue colors back in the skies. And you've also mentioned that the CAA has not completed whether it's inspection of the Air Sierra Leone. Now, should you complete, I'm saying the authority now, should you complete inspections and find out that it's not safe to fly Air Sierra Leone, what should we expect?
So I think there's two aspects. From our understanding and the application we received is that we understand that Air Sierra Leone's business model is in phases. The first phase, which is what was expected to start in December, and I'm sure they'll discuss it, it's their business. But what we had approved was the first phase. And the first phase was to start chartered operations between Sierra Leone and London Gatwick. And that phase is being operated by an aircraft that is registered in the UK. Ascend Airways UK is the operator of the aircraft that we have approved to do the London, the Gatwick Freetown route. And that aircraft, as we speak today, is, I believe it's about 2 years old. It has its airworthiness status confirmed by the UKCA authorities. It has a full AOC. It has an air transport license, and everything in terms of safety and security is fine with that aircraft as per our assessments. And the reason why we had already approved that first phase is purely because of these discussions. We know that the CAA is developing its capacity and has gone through a lot of training to make sure our inspectors have the required qualifications and on-the-job training to carry out these oversight activities. Because if you don't have the capacity, you cannot sign off any aircraft. So we were very happy to have the first phase being operated by an aircraft that's UK registered. Because what that means is the aircraft being registered in the UK CAA has full authority over that aircraft. They are in charge for the safety, the security, compliance of that aircraft. So that gave us the confidence to approve phase one. I think I also made clear in the press briefing in October 12 that subsequent phases, including the regional one, would be subject to the completion of what we described as the AOC process for Air Sierra Leone. And I explained at that time that we were only on phase two, and that this is what it involves. You have to check, you do a base inspection, you check the airworthiness, you check the fleet, you assess everything to do with the aircraft and the business before you give the approvals. And that was purely for the regional going forward. So like I said, we are now still looking at that, and this involves assessing the airworthiness of any aircraft in their fleet.
How many aircraft are there in the fleet?
So, Madam DG just spoke about the aircraft that we'll be using from London to Freetown. We also have in our fleet 3 Embraers that we'll be using regionally to fly from Freetown to the regional destinations. So all in all, a Boeing 737 MAX 800 series from the UK, and 3 Embraers 50-seaters that we'll be using in the sub-region.
So, Marco, how old would you say this aircraft is?
The aircraft operating from the UK is...
this particular aircraft that is veered off the runway in Nigeria?
The one that veered off from the runway
in Nigeria?
It's about 20 years.
20?
Yeah.
Do you think it's quite old? To be reintroduced?
I believe the safety of air operation depends on the maintenance of the aircraft and not the age. An aircraft can be 2 years old, but still not going through its routine maintenance, and therefore it's not deemed airworthy to fly. So this is what I would say. Yeah.
Director, I understand that perhaps the intentions are quite pure here, for introducing, Air Sierra Leone, which is highly needed at this time, particularly so when countries like Ethiopia, Kenya, Morocco, South Africa, all operating their own aircrafts. What reasons do you have, or can you put forward for buying such a very old aeroplane?
So firstly, I'm a regulator. I didn't purchase any aircraft. I think that's a discussion for Air Seron. What we do as a regulator is to make sure that any aircraft, be Air Seron or otherwise, is safe and airworthy to operate. So again, we made very clear in the press briefing that this is not a government-owned or run aircraft. We do not have equity, we do not have stake, we are not involved in the business of this aircraft. There is commercial branding, which says Air Seron, and I think what for us as a regulator, we're processing this airline as any other airline from a regulatory perspective. But I think the interest or the sense of national pride that I think all of us brought into as Sierra Leoneans was to have our colours in the sky again, was to have, for us in particular, Air Sierra Leone is the first application for AOC that we've received since 2008. And it is the first application that we're processing to have an aircraft actually registered in Sierra Leone and being under the oversight of the SLCAA. And that is, it's a long process to go through that AOC. And why it's so important to us is that I think I've said in various interviews in this year that I've been in office that we're working really hard to be removed from the EU safety list, the blacklist. And one of the key points that I agreed with the EU Safety Commission when I met with them earlier this year was that we will develop our capacity as a CAA to process AOCs. So this process that we're going through with Air Sierra Leone now is really our test case as a state, because it will be audited. And if we have gone through every stage of that 5-phase process in accordance with the regulations, we are then really positioned to be assessed and possibly removed from the EU safety list. So that's why it was such a very important opportunity for the state. But in terms of purchasing aircraft and all of that, it's not the CAA's function, and we've not been involved in that.
Perhaps Mr. Blackwell, you could tell us that, why did Sierra Leone decide, to do business, if I'm understanding correctly, with such an aircraft that is 20 years plus? I think it's 20 years, 2 months. I just checked with the plane spotters net. I used the plane still number to track it, and with its serial number and everything here. Why? And it was operated in several countries actually. I will not give you the history, all of them listed here, but just why?
Yeah, I would just like to read a phrase from the ICAO website. It says, an aircraft's age is not highly correlated with safe operations. So what Air Seron is focusing on is to provide safe air transportation. And like I mentioned before, and I believe the DG has mentioned that too, is that our airlines are going to all the maintenance required by the international aviation industry. So we believe strongly that our fleets of aircraft maintain the high standards of safety, and they go through all the maintenance requirements of an airline. So
what you've just read could be subject to arguments, that's why how, and if you read other particular websites, they will tell you the enormous disadvantages of using an old aircraft above 10, 15 years. The disadvantages are always enormous, which may affect profitability in this case. Before I ask the question I want to or intended to ask, is Sierra Leone benefiting anything from this merger, if you would call it that, with this airline? How much will Sierra Leone be making?
Well, I'm not in a position really to offer information on that, but definitely Sierra Leone is benefiting.
Because the manager told me that it's just the branding stuff.
Yes, so
equity, nothing of the sort actually. It just gets our name in the air. And if that's the case, then I'm not sure we're benefiting anything much.
I'm sure Sierra Leone is benefiting a lot. We're in the process of rebranding Sierra Leone when it comes to the airline industry.
So it's all about branding. Yeah. It's all about the branding in this case, manager. Is it all about the branding and nothing to take home? Don't you?
Well, like I said, you're asking me a question. Unfortunately, I'm not in the position. I'm not the CEO.
Okay.
I wish the CEO would have been here
I thought since you're the manager of the whole aircraft, you'd be positioned to
a commercial manager that would care for the day-to-day running of the
You
airport.
see, the decision may affect profitability. That's what I wanted to ask. You see, because much of the money will be being spent on the repairs and the likes. You've just explained that the aircraft is undergoing some maintenance.
Routine maintenance. These are required by ICAO standards. And routine maintenance, I want to be clear that
You do not think that with age you would spend more on maintenance? Not something you believe in?
I believe that the aircraft will continue going to routine maintenance. That is what I will say. I will not, because the aircraft are required to go through routine maintenance, and definitely this is what we want to keep to the standards of ICAO when it comes to.
Find out before this comes in. You have Airbus, for instance. You know, I was thinking out loud yesterday. You know, why didn't Sierra Leone, thought about doing business with Airbus, for instance, one of the biggest manufacturers.
Yeah, well,
Planes.
we have a business plan that we are bringing out, and hopefully these are things we will be looking into in the coming
Like
days.
Boeing as well.
Yeah.
Boeing and Airbus. These are the biggest.
Presently, we've chartered a Boeing flight that will be operating from London to Freetown.
That's nice.
That's with ASEAN Airways. Yeah.
Elizabeth?
All right, so I'd like you to also take us through again what kind of maintenance that the aircraft is undergoing at the moment. You mentioned, is it just routine?
It's routine maintenance, yes. And I mentioned also that it's been repainted to carry the flag and the colors of Sierra Leone.
So, what should the public expect from Air Seron, especially with regards to the concerns that have been raised?
Well, it should expect that Air Seron is airline business registered in Sierra Leone, and when we want to offer air travel that are safe for the Sierra Leonean population, and also we are a company that's aims in achieving a standard of safety, punctuality, and integrity whilst operating in Sierra Leone. We are also looking at providing quality travel experience for passengers.
Okay, back to you, Madam Barry. With regards the safety checks in line with international standards, what are the boxes left to tick for the airline?
Okay, so what we've done already is a base inspection, and as an authority, before you allow any aircraft to really operate in your country, you have to go to their base where the hub of the aircrafts are, establish, are they credible, do they actually exist, are they conducting any operations in that state of registry, what is their status with the CAA of that state of which they're registered in, and have a look at their fleet, and that has been done. Their documentations, their manuals, these are all very, very important things because these are what determine their level of compliance. What is left now from our perspective is for the aircraft to be ferried into Sierra Leone so that a comprehensive check of that aircraft in terms of its airworthiness status can be done in Sierra Leone. And that would be what I would say maybe is a secondary measure, because before that aircraft is allowed to leave Nigeria or South Africa, so before it's allowed to leave South Africa to go to Lagos, it must be cleared. Before it's allowed to leave Lagos to come to Freetown, it must be cleared. So we will be doing the third layer of clearing as an authority that the aircraft will be operating in. And then we will then be in a position to determine whether we allow it to operate or not. I just wanted to touch briefly on the issue of maintenance. Maintenance is not painting an aircraft. That's painting an aircraft. Anybody can paint an aircraft. Maintenance is required every so often for any aircraft, 1-year-old, 20-year-old, 25-year-old. So what we will be looking for, and one of the key criteria in assessing the airworthiness status of any aircraft, is that maintenance record. Has it completed its maintenance as per requirements? Were there any issues raised? Were the technicians that carried out the maintenance competent and qualified? Because that's another key thing. If somebody that hasn't met the threshold to be certified as an engineer on an Embraer cannot sign off that aircraft. So these are all things when we receive the reports that it's gone through its comprehensive checks. They call it C-checks. Comprehensive checks. It means everything from engine to cabin to all aspects that determine the airworthiness of that aircraft would have been assessed. Of course, if it's going to be commercial and it's going to be green, white and blue, it will have to be painted. And I'm sure that's just a cosmetic appearance. It's nothing to do with the actual serviceability of the aircraft.
Director, you have a wealth of knowledge in the aviation industry. I'll ask you this very thought-provoking question, and I'm sure there's a difference between routine or routinely, maintenance and emergency maintenance. Is it not so?
Sure.
Would you refer to this particular maintenance, that this particular aircraft is undergoing at the moment as a routine rather than emergency?
What I can say is that after an aircraft is involved in any incident, big or small, it is mandated to go through comprehensive checks. And that is what this aircraft has gone through. So I can't say it's routine because there is a schedule. It might have just been checked 1 week before the incident. That would have been its routine checks. But because it was involved in an incident, it is mandatory for a full once-over to be done on that aircraft for instances like this, especially if it's going to be doing commercial air transport activity between states. If it was, for example, that Air Seron, this aircraft is coming and it's just going from Freetown to Kenema, and the domestic. That means it's just operating within our own regulations. But the intent of the regional route is that it must leave here and go to somebody else's country. So that country as well has to say, hey, no, we're happy or we're not happy. And that's why they make it mandatory that whether an incident is big or small, you must then go through these C-checks. So that document is what CAAs will then use to assess and grant.
Manager, when last did this aircraft undergo maintenance before that particular incident in Nigeria?
I'm sorry, I'm not in a position to give that information at this point in time.
You're not in a position?
Yes. As today.
Are you saying that you don't want to tell us, or you don't know?
No, I'm just not. I don't have the fact with me to be able to share that with you. That's what I mean.
What's the end game here, manager? What's the objective of? I know, of course, the intentions are pure, as I've said earlier. But at the end of the day, there's a particular objective that Sierra Leone wants to achieve. What is that objective? Apart from branding, of course, as the director also carefully explained.
The objective is to provide a superior air travel experience for Sierra Leone. Yes, travel experience. We also want to be able to provide safe travel for Sierra Leoneans by air.
But I'm sorry to interject. I'm keen with adjectives and the like. You said superior traveling experience.
Yes, so this is our vision. This is what we are looking at to be able to achieve in the future.
I thought you are being contemporary, as in the present now, that this aircraft will provide superior traveling experience for Sierra Leoneans. Is that the context?
Yeah, you asked about the end game, so I'm just...
You are prognosticating for the future that indeed in the next 10, 5 years, 15 years,
we are working towards providing such services for...
In the next 5, 6, 10 years, not now, as in now.
Okay, so you're asking about now.
So I'm being meticulous here.
Yeah, I can see.
The question is, I'm asking, please bear with me. You see, when you said superior, you have to understand that there are other flights coming to Sierra Leone. We have Turkish, for instance, Ethiopian Airline, which is by far perhaps the biggest in Africa. In fact, they just received another Airbus, I think it was day for yesterday or so. It takes up to 400 passengers. It's a very big airline, coming to Sierra Leone on the daily. We have the smallest, like Askai, for instance. People are or I should say, are introduced to all these experiences at once. So you calling this 20-year-old aircraft a superior experience when the other aircraft
we have the aim as an airline to provide such a service in the future. Okay, so this is our vision. This is what we are working towards.
Let's now discuss budgets. Okay, it's a good thing that's and that's quite phenomenal indeed. Congrats to you and the whole team and the government. So how do you plan on doing this? I understand that we'll not be making much from these shuttles in and out of Sierra Leone. How would Sierra Leone raise the money to buy this perfect, let's say, Boeing or Airbus?
I believe you just mentioned that Sierra Leone has nothing to do with this.
I understand, but I'm asking now, you need money to buy these things. They're not cheap. So I'm asking, if you're in this business, I'm sure little bits of cash will be dropping into a particular basket somewhere. And how long would Sierra Leone wait to have its own bona fide, if I should call it that, aircraft, which it will buy with its own money?
Are you saying that the flag, the carrier that carries the flag of Sierra Leone cannot represent Sierra Leone? Because I think this is what we are trying to do at this present. And I think it's been welcomed by Sierra Leoneans that we have an airline that...
I give it to you 100%. No pessimism whatsoever. I'm just saying, so here's the thing. I'm not sure Ms. Barry, you're in the position to analyze this, but I'm saying, you see, there's a difference between an aircraft carrying your flag, an aircraft that you bought with your money flying the skies. I'm sure that's definitely going to be the case, is it not so?
Yes.
And that's what I'm asking. This is just, if you quote unquote in contemporary language, is branding. If you call it that, it's just carrying that logo, is it not so? Ms. Barry, do you want to chime in?
I think, just to come in, possibly, I think, like we said, they are a business separate to the government, so it's not Sierra Leone buying, it's them as a private business buying.
That's what I'm saying.
And I think, obviously, every business model, it's one of the things we actually assess when you look at the sustainability of the project. So a business model was submitted to us, including financials, including projections, and including assessments of sustainability. And I think if we recall during the press briefing, the CEO that was here at the time, he did explain that nobody wants to invest to lose. So I'm sure it's calculated. And there's a lot of models where aircrafts and airline businesses go into wet lease, dry lease agreements without acquiring physical airlines in terms of the heavy cash expenditure, but that's an aside. But I think for us, in terms of sustainability, we were encouraged that the business model has a wide range of operations. It's not just a charter between the UK and Sierra Leone. It's not just a regional, but the CEO did explain that there were also possibilities for cargo. We know that now feed salon is such, it's one of the key flagships. We're going to be having produce. There's going to be movement of goods and commodities between countries. And air transport is one of the easiest ways also to do that. So the CEO did mention that he's also assessed the cargo possibilities and the movement of these items via air transport. So even if an aircraft had 7 passengers, but if he's carrying cargo, he's making his profit. But again, I think that's purely from a business side. What we need to emphasize, and I think what the national concern was, which is even why I'm here, is safety. And we have to really be very, very clear, like I said in the beginning, that we don't put our arms around safety. We don't claim sovereignty and non-disclosure when it comes to safety. You must disclose and you must address what issues there are, if any. So back to the aircraft in question, I think you asked whether at the time of the incident, whether it was airworthy or whether it had its regular maintenance checks.
Yeah, it had it before that.
I think if you look in the report, and I think we really would encourage, the public, those interested, to read that report in its entirety, because you will follow the entire communications and the assessment. One thing that was made very clear in that report is that at the time of the incident, the aircraft was airworthy. That means it was in compliance with its maintenance checks. The crew, the pilot, co-pilot, all those on board were qualified and licensed to carry out that operation. All of these things are very important in establishing really what went wrong. If there was a question that maybe at the time the aircraft itself was in good condition, it would have been a red flag. It would have been something to look into. But from all indications, from the report and from our assessments, there was no attention drawn to those issues.
I'm not interjecting, but don't we have something called unpredictability when you talk about aviation or planes, the shuttling of a plane and the likes? Though there are other bigger aircraft which had crashed mid-air, and they had undergone all of their checks before that happened. I remember the case of this young pilot some years ago who just died. He just started actually when I think it was Boeing 737 or so that crashed mid-air. Are you saying that Boeing hadn't done that routine check before that crash? I think things happen. These are machines.
That is exactly the point, and that is something none of us can forget.
I can't predict.
Even in 100% checks, even if this aircraft was just cleared today, it can take off, a bird can fly into its engine, it goes down, or something can happen. We're dealing with machines, and that is one of the reasons why. In safety, there's not really much of an unpredictability factor because it is a routine, structured, draconian, system. It has to be. And even with all of that, you cannot be 100% in any of it because you're dealing with machines. Elements can come into play, such as weather, such as other factors that might affect that aircraft. Nobody wishes for an accident, nobody wishes for an incident, but outside of what you have control of, there are many other elements that can result to that. I just wanted to point out as well some instances. You referred to your friend that's a pilot, and last December, we can get Hamatan.
Yes.
Last December, I had to divert 3 planes to Conakry due to low visibility because we just could not land them in Lungi. So weather, visibility, rain, those conditions, they are a make or break.
Variables.
Very, very important.
Now, from a regulatory perspective, does the CAA face any financial or logistical challenges with regard to ensuring that all airlines actually undergo safety compliance?
So at the moment, I can't say so. I think we've been very tactical as well and very strategic in signing MOUs with colleagues. Just a few weeks ago, we had our colleagues from Qatar here, from the Qatar CAA, and actually the lead was a schoolmate of mine. We studied together. And through those missions, we're able to get a lot of technical support that we don't pay for, which has helped us get our inspectors to a level of qualification that's required. Additionally, I really must emphasize that at the moment we have no aircraft operating in Lungi that is under our state of registry because none of them fly our AOC. So ultimately, the state of registry, be it Belgium, Nigeria, Ethiopia, those state of registries are the ones that have issued those AOCs to those aircrafts. So they have the responsibility to have that oversight. We, of course, have a responsibility because it's coming to our airspace, but they are not under our registry. I don't know if that's very, very clear. So that is why we are also very meticulous about what information goes out, because we do now want to be at a point where we can establish a registry as a state and have airlines on our register and have our CAA responsible for the safety and security oversight of those airplanes. And like I said, Air Seron is the first application. So I think most of them were touched on during the program, but I will just go over some of the key ones again. I think there was a question as to why we would allow a company to fly our flag without doing assessing the airworthiness. I think the business plan of Air Seron that was received by the CAA and the state discusses phases. And like I said, phase 1, which is what has been approved as of now, was the charter agreement between Air Seron and a UK-registered airline, Ascend Airways, to start the charter between Sierra Leone and London Gatwick. And that has been approved. And indeed, that aircraft as well will be branded Air Sierra Leone. I think I should just clarify quickly. Just because a plane is sprayed green, white, and blue, it doesn't mean that it is operated by a Sierra Leonean operator. So I think this is the distinction we're getting confused with. So phase one, which is the one being operated by Ascend Airways, has been approved because that airline has met the criteria of the CAA. The regional routes, which are being operated by ExeJet's fleet, are undergoing inspection as we speak. And once those are also approved, whether the aircraft is painted green, white or blue or not, it's the operator, the owner of the aircraft is what you're assessing. So phase one has been approved, which is why we're allowing it to fly those flags. Just to maybe inform the public briefly some of the things we look for when we give an airline or a flight permit not only to operate here, but even to fly over our airspace. It might be interesting for people to know that every flight, even flying over our airspace, we have to give approval for that. So the documents we assess are, number one, does the aircraft have a valid AOC from the state of registry? What is the state of registry? Does it have a valid insurance? Does the aircraft have a valid airworthiness certificate? Does it have a valid noise certificate? Do the pilots have the qualified licenses to fly those aircrafts? Are the pilots' medicals up to date? I think we saw recently Turkish Airlines, mid-flight, the pilot died. It can happen. It's a reason why you also have two pilots. A pilot medical is even assessed to see the health status of that pilot prior to any flight, and also the maintenance records. So it is only after a thorough review of these technical documents and an additional security clearance from ONS that a permit or an approval of any sort is given, and that is for any aircraft. And we just wanted to make that very, very clear today.
Manager?
So we want to take this opportunity to send our regrets because we could not start selling the ticket like we promised, and this is due to obtaining the ATOL. The ATOL is an air travel organizer's license. Now this ATOL is like a scheme that provides consumer protection for airline passengers. In the event of cancellation, this ATOL provides protection for passengers. Now Air Seron obtained an agreement with an agent that could only provide ATOL for 500 passengers. Now we need much more than 500 bond for aircraft. For example, the flight from London would take 189 passengers. So we realized that we needed a bond that would take thousands or cover thousands of passengers. So we are in the process of completing that presently. And as soon as that is completed, the website will be opened up and it will be possible for customers to buy tickets directly. Now, as to the question of the website, I would like to take this opportunity to give out the contact details of Air Seron. Air Seron presently holds an office at the New Brookfield Hotel, room 405.
Right, folks, don't forget to
subscribe to this channel now.